Yeah, it's good stuff. I love using it. Makes my hair so shiny. All right. So, last night how we were talking about, or no, I sent you a reel. Was it a reel or was it a meme? But it was about the problem solving and having a neurospicy brain and being like,
Oh,
I think it was like a stand up or something. And it was like, if you have
yeah,
7
it was
apples and, and how many you have, like,
it was a word problem.
yeah,
Yeah.
who left the door open, right? Like, word
Right.
problems for me are not my friend at all. I don't like them. I've never liked them. And we're going to talk about on this episode some work stories that we have with whether it's, clients or maybe places we've been and things like that. So it made me think of this story. And we were sitting, it was me and it was Jill. And I was the director and I think she was the team leader. Maybe she was a CPOC at the time. I think she was a CPOC. So when we had the integrated model. So I want to be a good leader and go with my fellow person to this difficult hiring manager's office. Really difficult this guy was. Very particular. He was complaining, like all this other stuff. So I'm like, I'm going to go with you this time because she's like another rec in his name, right? A requisition that I got to fill. So like, I'll go with you. I'm going to be your protector in this situation, supposedly. So we go to his office and we sit down and we're talking about the qualifications of who he wants to see in this role, right? And I can't remember, it was for something, maybe product or I can't remember, but it did require some mental agility. I will say that. But what happened had nothing to do with the job that we were recruiting for. So we're sitting there and he was being a little pompous. I'll just say that. I can say pompous. Yeah. He's being a little pompous.
Yeah.
We're filling his job. So I'm sitting there and he goes, let me give you we're like, what do you ask candidates? What does that look like? What's your expectation? Trying to go through and get a really good understanding of what this hiring manager wants. And he says, well, I'll give you an example of what I give to candidates. And I'm like, well, all right, what is that? So he starts going into a word problem, Danielle. I can't even remember this word problem. I think Jill remembers the word problem to this day because I made her solve it. So I'm sitting there.
With yeah.
My eyes get as big as saucers because I know this is not my sweet spot. I don't know. I hate math word problems. If you have any other issues or things, I'll solve them, but not math word problems. Don't give me. And there's so many on these cognitive tests that I've received too. I'm like, how am I actually passing these? Because I don't know. I don't even know. So, anyways, I guess I'm good at them, but I don't like them. Maybe that's my lesson here. But anyway, so it gives us this problem, this math problem. And he's going through, I can't even, at this point, I just stopped paying attention because I'm like, she's got to know it. She's so smart, right? She's got to know it. I don't even need to know this answer. It's a shoo-in. So she's apparently she was trying to get the problem right. And yeah, we didn't really get to the answer. Or maybe she did. I think she might have gotten to the answer eventually because, at first she was like, nope, nope, nope. And then she got to the answer and I'm like, I am so thankful that we got out of there alive because this guy asked us to, in a collection of, what we're going to be recruiting for, a math problem to solve. I'm a recruiter, not a math problem solver. I mean, we'll solve financial math, P&L math, those types of things.
Sure. Yeah. I wasn't prepared for
No,
this. Yeah.
but not how many apples Sally has or whatever it is on the seashore. So that's one of my favorite stories where I just was going in to be like, we got this. We'll win him over. And then he hits us with the math problem.
Never heard of anybody. I mean, I've heard of, interesting questions in an interview process, but I've never heard of anybody asking a word problem.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll give it to them for uniqueness, but I don't think that's probably ideal for someone, especially if they're on the fly, you going to give me paper and pencil to work on this? Or are you going to just figure it out in my head? What's going on?
Yeah, well, we had our notepad because, we were taking notes from the meeting. So luckily.
You're a candidate and you're in an interview.
That's so true. Yeah. I try to always bring a pen and a pad of paper if I'm interviewing so I can take notes. But my notes afterwards, I probably have a page full of notes here that I can show you what they look like. They are... they're not even legible. I'm just acting because I feel like I should be taking notes, that I'm taking notes.
Right.
Maybe I shouldn't have said that out loud, but I can remember and retain information,
Right.
I don't necessarily need to take a note. If I want to make sure,
Right.
I never go back to my notes. So I just remember what I'm supposed to remember.
Yeah.
That's how my brain works.
Or I'll jot down like if it's a specific name or something that I want to refer back to, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. But
Now, if
yeah.
it's a password, I better make a note because I'm not going to remember that password later.
Mm-mm. No, I've changed my password on my laptop like before I was out on leave for a couple days and then came back and I couldn't remember it, because I didn't already have like the muscle memory of it yet. But the computer was forcing me to change the password. So
Yeah. Yeah. I've done that. Oh, so I locked myself out of my MacBook one time. And I could not. I swore this was the password. I used it for everything. I won't say it just because in case it's out there floating on some
right,
account somewhere that I don't remember out there. People can get in.
right,
But I use this one password all the time. Like all the time. So I just know that's what I put this MacBook password as. I had to go get it unlocked. They charge you like over $100 to unlock. Yes.
really,
So the guy set it to, whatever he set it to, and it is the same thing. I am not changing it to the reset because I know
right,
I can just go to the facility and say, "What do you know the reset passwords as?" And they'll tell me.
right.
I was thinking, I'm going to save that over $100 next time. I locked myself out.
I would have thought there would be like a way to like bypass it with your phone or something like that,
I thought so too. I really thought so too, but apparently not. I had to leave my laptop there for them to, they couldn't even do it like in the moment. Like I had to
Mm,
leave it there in order for them to do it. I was like, well, what do you do?
that's an expensive lesson to learn. Yeah.
It really was. So yeah, passwords, definitely writing those down, but other stuff, no. What about you? What are some of your most memorable or work?
Yeah, it's interesting because when we started talking about this, the one that came to mind was several years ago when I was at Helix and I was managing our tools, the access to tools and things, and we had a shared system of Indeed licenses. And I guess I can say Indeed, right? Yeah. Like they're not a sponsor, but they had a shared of these licenses that we had owned as a company, and they were billed out to different accounts and the different recruiters that used them. And I was the only one who had access to that outside of Indeed, and I managed everybody's contact credits. And I used to, usually like before, because we had people who worked in other countries or on different time zones, and I was on the West Coast. So a lot of times I would, like on a Friday afternoon or whatever, I'd go in and kind of look and see what the levels were on different licenses and make sure that people had contact credits and, shift some over to the people who either were running low or had zeroed out and whatever. So that come Monday morning, when I started, people wouldn't be sort of waiting around, especially people who were technically working on like Sunday night, my
Yeah.
time. So I did that regularly. And so sometimes we didn't have a big pool of them because this is back in the day when Indeed would credit you back. And so sometimes there would be a lag time of that happening.
See, that
And
was
so
my suggestion when we're doing our page, on LinkedIn to say if people accept, we get the credit back.
yeah, we
I'm
should
like,
back
why
like
did
the old
anyone take
Indeed.
away that model? That was like one of the best
Yeah, because
models.
they realized they could monetize that in a whole new
Everything's
way.
about money, isn't it?
Um,
Like not what's good
Everything's
for the
about
goose.
money. Yeah. Instead of keeping them the licenses the same price and then just charging for the credits, no, we're going to take the credits away and we're going to increase the cost of the
'Cause
licenses.
everyone's got
So anyway,
endless pockets.
oh yeah. And so in that interim, a lot of times I would go and I'd look at like recruiters who had just stockpiled, you know, credits, especially if they were going to expire in the next, like it was coming up on 6 months. And sometimes there were recruiters who had like 3,000 of these at the time because they got so many credits back and then they wouldn't use them for a while and they kind of stopped. So I, at some point, went in and I took some contact credits from some. Now I didn't like deplete their account. I just took 100 here, 100 there, whatever it was. And so then I come back the next week and I get this email from someone or, like on a particular team that we had that was supported our biggest client. I won't say their name, and he asked me, he was like, so and so, this recruiter noticed that and somehow this recruiter noticed that out of the thousands they had, they had lost a couple. Like they must have kept a running tally or something. And this had happened to a couple. And it was all on the same team. Nobody else said anything. And I said, yeah, because other people were running out and this is a shared resource. So I had to move some over. Like they'll get them back. Like, once we have more, I can give them back. But they weren't using them. They were just stockpiling them. And so I was called into a meeting with the guy who was over this entire account and somebody else who wasn't, and it wasn't my boss either, but they had a personal relationship to each other, which I won't. But I was called into a conference call because this is before we were using Teams and all that.
Isn't it so hard not to like sidetrack while you tell the story because you have so
I
many
know.
sides to the side? Like I have
I
such
know.
a problem with
There's nuances here.
There's
So I
levels.
get on, and I had gone along with this leader before. Like he had said, oh, that I really got it when it came to strategy and that he was really impressed with things that I'd come up with. So we'd had a good working relationship, although I had heard things from other people about how difficult he was to work for and things. I personally never experienced it. So I went in with like, okay, yeah, we're going to talk about this, but like, I wasn't expecting it to be like a big thing. Boy, was I wrong, because I get on the call and he just starts, he asked me about it, why I did it, and I explained. And I don't even remember everything he said, but he just went on this tirade about how his team was being shortchanged and they had paid for these, which no, they didn't, not really. And that basically he called me a word that rhymes with Yahtzee, and that how dare I do this. And so, I mean, it was just so crazy. And the person who was on the call, who put the call together on our behalf, just sat there and didn't say a word. Didn't say a word. And I knew them kind of personally, didn't say a word, was in a higher leadership role than me, didn't say anything. Like, and I know that they knew it was wrong what he said and how out of proportion he blew it. And I got off and I was like, okay, I'll put him back. It's not a big deal. And put him back. And now in hindsight, I know I should have probably gone to HR about them.
Yeah.
Because of what they said to me and how they ridiculed me and called me a, Yahtzee, because it was so inappropriate.
Yeah,
it was so
that's
just,
like, I know when people start to
and I
say
really lost
inappropriate
respect.
stuff, like, whoa.
Yeah. And then that was one of those situations where I'm like, so he just gets away with behaving like this because he's on a big account. And this big account likes him because they're probably pretty crappy too. And he just gets away with it because of that. So he's allowed to behave like this. But if I'd been a man, I kind of wonder, would he have treated me like that? It just, there's a lot of.
No, I know who you're talking about, the particular person. It's anyone. Yeah. It's anyone. Like it literally
I'm
was
sure that's true.
Like their self-importance was really high and big, and still to this day, based on what I know. So yeah, it would have went, I believe. It didn't matter.
Probably. You're probably right. But it was such it was like I'd gone and taken money out of these people's bank accounts. You know what I mean? Like that I had stolen from them. And I was like, we literally just moved some contact credits over for a couple of days. It wasn't, and I basically did it just to do myself a favor, to not have because usually in the mornings when I would log in, that was one of the first things I had to do, because we had these people in all other countries and they would be emailing me. So I'd come in with like 30 or 40 emails of people who wanted contact credits. So then I'd have to spend like an hour just getting through all of that. So I was kind of helping myself out by getting ahead of it.
Yeah.
And then also making sure that people had the ability to do what they needed to do when they logged in the morning without having to wait. So it was like I was doing it on behalf of myself, but also the company. And he couldn't understand that. It was like that I just took something away personally. It was like, we're all part of a bigger company.
But it's if you use them or lose them, right? We had the use them or lose them philosophy, because if you didn't use them, you would actually lose them. So it was better if someone else used them. If you weren't going to, then them just going to waste. And that was like the avoidance of the waste is what it was.
Well, and yet his team would get in trouble and get their LinkedIn licenses flagged all the time and shut down because they had people who were interchanging the licenses too quickly, because LinkedIn has a thing where you can only change a license to a different person like twice a month or something like that. And basically they monitor it. And if you are doing it too much, they will flag it and they'll shut that person down. And so they were doing it where like people were using the same license, like logging in under a new person, like within 24 hours and over. And so they kept getting their licenses flagged. And I'm like, your team is over here, like doing stuff they shouldn't be doing and putting us in legal contract, breach of contract potentially, and that's a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
Than these content credits that we're getting compensated. We're not paying for them, at that time. So anyway, yeah, that was a really interesting experience because I was like, wow, this is, person who I thought, had a little more integrity
Yeah.
than,
I've been in situations like that. I've had people say some things to me, but also witnessed it. And it's up to the other person. You know what I mean? The person who is witnessing to say, hey, this isn't okay. Especially if you're a higher level leader on the phone, right? If you're the highest level or whatever that is, to say that we don't talk to each other like this or we don't treat each other like this is not okay. And it's just interesting that, people don't like, what's the fear there to tell someone, hey, that's not okay. We're all trying to achieve a common goal. We're all trying to do the same things.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my other most favorite stories is I love food. You know that. I love different kinds of food. I go through different ways of eating and things like that. So sometimes I'm vegetarian, sometimes I'm vegan, sometimes I'm pescatarian. Right now I'm actually eating a little bit of beef again. So it just depends, right? How I eat. Like no one's offended by that. But anyways, but a lot of times I'll just eliminate the meat altogether or just do vegetarian or pescatarian or something like that. So anyways, I love to, wherever I'm going locally, to try the cuisine. There's like a special dish. I want to go find it. Like that's what.
Oh, I know you did. You introduced me to places that I'm like, whoa.
I am a Yelp Elite and I am a Google Local Guide, by the way.
Oh, yeah, me too. Well, I'm a Google Local Guide, but I'm not sure about the Yelp because I haven't used that one in a long time, but I used to,
Yeah, now I'm 2 years in a row because I stopped using it and then I went back to it. So I was like, oh, I kind of miss Yelp. So now I'm a
Right.
Yelp Elite 2 years. Thanks to my Yelp
Congratulations.
Elite, my squad. I'm on the Yelp squad. So anyways, I'd love to find like really great places. So if I'm at a client, they say, you should really try this, or we're going to order this for lunch because it's, part of the local thing. I get really excited about that. So this was a client in Georgia. That's what I'll say, just in Georgia. And they were raving. And I was there for a recovery. So let me tell you why I was there. So the account was failing. We didn't have the right structure in place. I had to come in, talk to the client, get them to agree that we could retain the business, and then redesign the structure. And I had carte blanche to do this, which was kind of unheard of at the time. So the person that I reported to did not get anyone carte blanche. So it's pretty cool. I was like, I got the keys to the Ferrari, I'm doing everything I want to do. So anyways, so I'm like, all right, I'm going in. I know they're unhappy. Like they must have reamed me out for like an hour or so. It was a long time. I took a verbal lashing from the client. And I finally got to the point where I was like, okay, let's just get up and whiteboard this. Let's just go figure this out, right, together. So during this, or I think it was maybe before we even got to the meeting, they were talking about the pies, these special pies. They were pot pies, right? And they're famous in Georgia. So they're going to order these for lunch and they're delivered.
Love it.
Piping hot. So I'm sold, my chicken pot pie. Like this sounds great to me. I mean, chicken at the time, it's perfect timing, They have it available because they only make so many a day or whatever else. So I'm excited that this pie's coming. So I don't mind the hour lashing I just got, right? Like, fine. I'm going to get a pot pie.
The chicken pot pie is going to do a lot of work smoothing over those rough edges.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Like the pot pie is coming. So all this, that's like a comfort food. So no matter how I'm feeling on the inside, that pot pie is going to really help me out. So, the pot pies come. And now I'm whiteboarding, right? I just said I got reamed for like an hour and a half or so. And finally it's like, let's just start whiteboarding the solution and let's get what this team should look like and how we should deliver it, how many resources we have and what we're going to stack to this. And I'm ready to go, right? So I'm drawing and everything else. Now I can't sit down because if I sit down and stop, my job is to come out of this meeting with this client retained, no matter what it takes, right? So I get to agree to the staff. I get to agree, whatever else I need to agree to and put in a plan, here's how we'll do the recovery and things like that. So someone else's account, I was coming in to fix it. Anyways, my job is to come out if I don't walk out of here with this account, there's no way I can tell my boss and the CEO that this account is completely lost because they had this business for a long time. So I just, whatever it takes. All right. So I'm designing the solution. Pot pie is there. I can smell it. Boy, does it look good. But darn it, if I sit down.
And that's not something you could just like eat on the fly or hold in your hand to eat. No, that's gotta sit down.
Not at all.
Yeah.
How do you whiteboard with the pot pie? It just doesn't work.
You can't be like over here with the pot pie whiteboarding over here. Yeah.
It absolutely does not work. So I just keep whiteboarding. My job is to keep this. I'm getting texts from my boss like, hey, how's it going in there? I'm like, it's good. I think I got them. They're gonna retain. They're gonna stay. Like,
don't stop to eat the pot pie.
Yeah, we have to fix this. We just have to fix this. So, anyways, I'm like, I'm agreeing to stuff just so you know. Heads up. I'm agreeing to more resource. I'm agreeing to like some things. We're still going to be profitable. I never put the company risk in that way, but we're going to be able to retain and we're going to be able to deliver in the right way that makes them feel happy. Anyways, here I go. It must have been, so lunch gets there around what? Noon, 1-ish. Let's just say it's noon. By the time we're done whiteboarding and I'm going through and I'm plugging, because now I have to take the team that exists, right? And say, let's plug those people in because I, keep the same people. It's working if it's efficient. If not, you say, okay, who's not working and things like that. So anyways, all right. So by now it's like 4 or 5 o'clock. The client looks at me, the one that was really raving about these pot pies. And she said, looks at me in her sweet little Southern voice and says, you didn't even get to eat. Sorry, that was a really bad Southern accent. I know. And I was just like, I'm going to eat it anyways. So I ate a cold pot pie before I got in the car to head back to the airport. But we did keep the business. It was retained.
Yeah. It's not like you can take the pie home with you.
No.
Because you got to get on it's not going to go through security. So
I had to sit there and just eat it. I ate it alone by myself with my beautiful whiteboard and the business retained. It was, you know what? It was still good. It would have been so much better. So I still have the dream and I can't think of what this pot pie place is, but it's around Alpharetta. So if anybody knows, you let me know what that is. Because I still have the dream of eating a hot pot pie from there. I just want a vegetable one now. I don't eat chicken anymore. Beef is okay too. But, I just really want a hot one because it was pretty good cold. But it just wasn't the same. Yeah. They were really, in every bite, Danielle, they were talking about how good the pot pie was.
Yeah, they're just like, this is good.
Felt tortured.
And you're just like, your mouth is like drooling and you're like, oh, hungry.
Because, I didn't eat breakfast. If I flew in that day, I wasn't eating breakfast.
You didn't.
No. So that would have been my first meal of the day. Had I been able, but, I ate at 4 and like I said, or 5, whatever time it was. But the client was retained. And they were happy after that. So hopefully they still have that business. But anyways.
I don't believe they do.
Yeah. See, that hurts my heart. Pretty right sure. Here. Look, I suffered for what? What did I suffer for then?
No, you did your job, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they do, but I don't think they do. It's sort of like that. If I'm thinking of the company,
I don't think they do. Now that I'm really thinking about it, I remember this, like later in life, the bid coming up. So I think you're right.
Yeah, like I don't think they would have won a, re-upping of that contract.
Yeah.
So
another one of my favorite stories is when I was in New York. So I'd go for this financial client, and it was.
Oh, I know.
You know who this client is.
I recruited for them.
Yeah.
I did.
That was a tough go. That was
yeah. Well, and that was at Clover.
Yeah, and those were some hard positions, like the actuaries and things like that. So
I'll never forget. They had a quant skill.
Yep. Have you recruited for quant before? Yeah, totally. You got this. So, anyways, we're trying to get to for some reason, and I went out there every single week because this was an account that needed like a lot of care and a lot of maintenance and a lot of hand holding and
it was Wall Street. They needed a lot of.
They did. Yeah. They had money, so rightfully so. All right, so I'm there and the team is filling these roles. They're doing a pretty good job. We have active candidates interviewing and things like that. But they kept telling us we weren't submitting on requisitions. And I'm like, I make sure the recruiters, all the time, even at the director level, I was, overseeing that I had a manager over the account. I made sure that there were submittals on these requisitions, like everything that we had. So we're sitting and it's me and the manager that's, working the account with me. And I have this requisition list. So I have the list that's made by the client that they're giving us. And then I somehow got a system list. I don't remember how I got it, but I got it from someone that gave it to me. And this was the client who was putting this list together. So how do you tell a client that they're wrong? It's kind of
That is tricky.
on Wall Street in New York. It's a pretty fine line here, right? Like this is a pretty fine line that I'm walking. And I'm telling him, like, we don't have these requisitions. We're not receiving them. We're just not receiving them. Like when you're sending us the list, they're not included. Unless the person is deleting them somehow that's received. But I don't think they're not, they're just not. So anyways, I had the list come directly to me. I printed out the list I was receiving, right? Got the ATS list and we're sitting there. So now I hand him the list we're receiving. I have the ATS list. And so they were coded like with our company code or something like that, so you can go through. So I told him, I was like, just call out a rec number, like we must have been sitting there for, I don't know how long, just kind of not really going back, but, just having this, like, I promise you they're not, like, I'm not going to tell you they're on there when they're not on there. Like, that's just, why would that doesn't even make sense. So anyways, we're having this conversation. So I said, just give me a rec number. Just give me any rec number. And he says like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I look down at my sheet. I don't see it. And I look back at it and I say, go fish. And the manager that's, helping me with his account, like he's trying to hold it together. Like I just can't believe. I was like, I was just so tired of it. But it was funny. So
like
we
don't have a
about it. It's kind of like a funny way to like prove my point.
Right.
No, it's not here. Go fish. So we got a really good laugh about it. So that's I don't know if you should tell them to go fish, but it's a good way to tell your client they're wrong. He had a sense of humor about it anyways. So.
Right.
Yeah.
We do not have a bingo, ladies and gentlemen.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. It was just.
That's hilarious.
A
sense of humor.
Yeah.
But that is hilarious. I would have died laughing.
Yeah. It was really hard to hold it together. But then when he, it was just like, gosh, like, all right.
Well, yeah,
we can all laugh about
like,
this
what would be the point of us deleting recs that are going to get us business? And, so there's something is happening. Somebody's removing these.
Yeah.
And it's probably not.
Well, it was like an it's like the more I think about it, the more it's kind of coming back. They had this generated report that would come to us. So it was, that's what would pull the spreadsheet. So it would come out of the ATS, format into a spreadsheet, just like Brass Ring would do when you would download reports and connect back in the day, right? So it would download into that spreadsheet, and then the recruiter would receive it. They would open it, and they would know what requisitions that they're supposed to be working that are assigned to us. So what was happening is the system was missing, even though there was the assignment there. It was, for some reason, it wasn't pulling that reporting and sending it to us.
It wasn't even like assigned to a different company or something.
So that's how I got, I was like, give me a full export of everything right directly out of the system, versus the scheduled report. So the scheduled report was a report that was missing things.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. It was a really wonky error.
Yeah, that is weird.
I see why you didn't believe me. I mean, I see. It is a system automated thing, but yeah.
There's probably some weird filter on it that was blocking.
Had to be.
So
had to be something.
Yeah.
So
interesting. Go.
So anyway, the solution was going forward was a manual export instead of depending on the automated report. A little bit more work, but it worked. Yeah. What about you? Any other fun stories or?
I'm trying to think of a fun story. Well, I remember years ago I was working on an account and I was on site in Southern California, and we were working with this client who they weren't paying their invoices, and it was kind of becoming a problem, but I sat on site. And so the team that I had, most of them were virtual. And so we kind of worked out with the director that he would sort of handle the billing issues and kind of be the bad guy about, dealing with getting us paid. And since I had to maintain the relationship with the client. And so we went into there was another client, there was another vendor who was helping to fill some of the jobs. And I kept being told by the people who were doing the interviewing, and because they were getting ready to launch a bunch of stores. So they were doing all this hiring for all these locations. And so we were doing like full days of interviews in multiple locations. And so we would be given like, okay, there's going to be 3 people there. You can, fill these time slots on these days or whatever. And then, so, we were working on that. And then the other vendor that they had was sending people and just kind of like flat out just sending people and like just taking the entire day and filling them without really screening the people. And they didn't understand the culture. Like this was very casual, business casual type of environment. And they were making everybody show up in suits. It was really odd. And so the people that I was working with at the company, at the client, were like, yeah, we really need you guys to staff these because the people you send us are really good, but the people who are being sent by this other company are not. And I'm like, okay, yeah, cool, we got you. Yeah, I'll be happy to fill these jobs. And so that's what ended up happening. And then later I found out that that vendor was basically not charging anything. Like they were trying to get the business so badly that they weren't charging. And so they were kind of like the leadership there was kind of giving them preferential treatment because they knew they didn't have to pay it. But yet the people who were actually filling the jobs and working were like, no, we need your candidates because they're not doing anything. And so we were coming up on the eve of our contract would need to be renewed. I think it was like the end of a 2 or 3 year contract or something. And it was going to renew or needed to be renewed like in mid-January. So we're coming up against that window. It's the holidays. We're trying to be like, hey, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, blah, blah, blah. Could you please pay our invoices, right? And we met with the guy who was over recruiting and his leader, who is the HR officer. And we go into his office and we're like, hey, this is all the stuff these are all the jobs we filled for you, the yada, yada, yada. Like, this is what we're proposing in our contract. And the HR officer kind of looks like, what has happened? Like, he looks so confused about, okay, like, good for you that you filled all these jobs. I don't know what we're talking about. And the guy who was over the recruiting, I guess he was a director. I can't remember his exact title, but he just was like kind of a lapdog, like just like, okay, yeah, this is great. Yeah, everything's cool, And meanwhile, me and my director are like looking at each other like it's like you were invited to party expecting it to, like one thing and ends up being something else. It was just a very weird situation because we're like, we put a lot of work into this presentation and we're trying to make good, but like we also need you guys to pay these invoices. And it was just really uncomfortable. So we get out of that and we're looking at each other like, what was that all about? That was really weird. And then over the Christmas holidays, I get a call from, our CEO who's like, Danielle, why is the client not paying all these invoices? We have all these outstanding invoices. And I'm like, yeah, well, Bob, I'll just call him Bob, was working with the client trying to get these paid. And, he's working on it. Well, we're a publicly traded company. We've got to have these invoices paid. I'm like, I know. We just talked to them about it. We've been working on it. So anyway, we go back, after New Year's, and they're like digging in, like they're being forced to dig into the invoices and actually like have an answer instead of just like, oh yeah, we're on it. They start backtracking, and my boss calls me one day and he's like, Danielle, they're saying that we didn't fill any of these jobs. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, they're saying that they're disputing all these invoices saying we didn't fill the jobs. And so they won't pay the invoices because, they didn't give us the approval to fill them. And I'm like, wrong. That is absolutely not okay. I'm like, I know we got the approval. And I said, send me the invoices, what we have it in play, and I will get the documentation for everything. So I did. So I had to put together, okay, this spreadsheet, or this invoice ties to these hires, and this is the email communication because my previous boss, namely one Jennifer, who's on this call, had told me get documentation for everything. And you had left the company by that time, but you were like, don't leave anything to chance with them. Get everything in writing, and even if they do their run by rec,
Dude, I mean, it's called a
or
drive-by. Like, can you feel?
right,
That's
yeah,
like,
right.
can you
Like,
put that
wait,
in
did he just
writing
give
and
us an order?
make sure we have that in
Yeah,
writing?
yeah.
Yeah.
It was like, you put it in an email and you send it to them, even if they don't like respond. You have your read receipt on you that that it was sent, so you can confirm. And so I would do that. I would like, okay, so hey, so and so recruiter or the director of recruiting, we got just to confirm, we've got this, recs today for cook or whatever, because they, were doing the food preparation and the warehouse and all those different roles. And, and so we approved, and these are the people that we submitted, and this is the ones you hired, and blah, blah, blah. And it took a little while, but eventually we got paid. We didn't renew the contract, but at that point, nobody really wanted to anyway, because it was such a nightmare. But yeah, it's funny because I lived in the area and I knew some people who worked for a bread company who was one of their suppliers or was becoming one of their suppliers once the stores were open. So I told my friend, because she, told me, she's like, oh, so and so's, working, their company is going to be doing the bread and everything. And I was like, tell them to make sure their invoices get paid.
Yeah, pass the
Like,
lesson, right?
don't let it get past 30 days. Not let it get past 30 days. They know exactly what they're doing. They're notorious for this. This is what happened to me. And I've heard the horror stories about the parent company doing this, and they kind of like force people into providing services by not paying them.
Yeah.
It's a like can't really pull back. Anyway,
But I
so
will
she came to me.
say, can I just say in there?
Yeah,
We had a really fun Christmas party when I went.
yeah, they didn't have that when I was there though. I missed that.
I love their Christmas.
I
It
bought a
was
dress
great. Or
thinking we were going to
holiday.
be
Sorry,
invited.
should I be saying holiday?
I even bought a dress because I thought we were going to be invited, and we weren't invited.
I went
Oh,
one year. It was a blast. I remember someone fell in. They got like too intoxicated where they fell into the Christmas tree, this huge tree, and knocked it over.
was it me?
Like,
Because I wasn't
oh,
there.
but they like, in general, a lot of there was some fun people at the
Right.
company. It was fun.
That
Yeah.
they don't pay their invoices. Don't let it get past 30
Mhm.
days, unless they're, and it's funny because she came back to me later and said, oh my God, I'm so glad you gave me that information, because they came back and were like, yeah, they stopped paying their invoices. And you could tell, because if you went into the stores once they were open, suddenly there was no bread on the shelves. There was like out of bread.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, they didn't pay their invoices. And so it took a while, because there'd be times you'd go in the stores and there would be certain things that just weren't there. And so they might blame it on a, supply chain
Mhm.
problem, whatever. It was like, no, it's an invoicing problem. The accounting people, were told not to pay these
Yeah.
bills. And they had it all automated so that it would go to a different, like, offshore. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a
That's
start. I
great.
mean, essentially, it was a start that they were just starting in the U.S. coming from the U.K. So yeah, that's
Right.
really interesting.
Yeah, but they had some bad habits that were rolling over to the US from the UK.
Yeah.
But that was a really interesting experience, because I was like, oh my God, they're trying to dispute all this stuff that I billed for. Because I mean, that was on me, all these invoices that I had helped prepare and put in to be billed. And they were trying to say we didn't, and because their, at the time, their email system, I think, only kept things for like 60 days or
Well, yeah,
something.
the company's days are 3. I'm like, I loved it. You should
Yeah,
see my
really short
Gmail.
period of time. But they had no email records. And I think that was very intentional. Like, they didn't want to have records longer than like 30 or 60 days. And so I think they kind of were under the assumption that we were the same.
Yeah.
And was like, no, we don't. We have all this. And so I had every email. I had access to emails from recruiters who had left the account. Like, no,
Yeah, but stuff like that
no,
you got to print out to, like, to your point, like if it deletes after, like, because there's this safeguard for legal on the email where it's just purging stuff out of the
right,
system. I remember the first company I
right,
went to that did that. I was like, what's that? Where's my stuff? Because I don't like to. I feel like it's a way. This might give a lot of people a heart attack. So I hope they hold on to their seats when I say this out loud. I don't clean my email because it's such a waste of time. Like I scan through, like if I have a large team, I tell them how to send emails so that way I know if I need to just read it, I need to respond to it, it's urgent, it's, those things. And then like I
right.
scan often, but I don't go through. I know some people that spend a lot of time filing their emails, but if I have 300,000 emails, it doesn't bother me
300,000.
like it used to. Way back in
I
the
know
day, I'm
it
like,
used to bother
my
me
inbox
more,
has to be clean. Now
and
I'm like,
like even my
it's
personal
such a
email
waste of
now, I'm like,
time. It's just a waste.
yeah, I used to be pretty fastidious about
No,
that,
no.
and then now I'm not much. Like even my personal email, I would always keep it. I didn't like having that alert on my phone of showing like how many unread emails there are, but now I'm like,
Yeah, hold
whatever.
on. I
What are you
can
gonna
tell
do?
you let me tell you how many are on my Gmail right now, this second. Because remember, I told you I had to buy the extra space. I didn't realize it fell off. I have right now in my Gmail, this is going to give some people a heart attack. Let's see. Let me find it. 404,350. What's your number?
Emails that were all unread
No,
emails.
that's just like my number when you look on your phone, like your Gmail thingy, on it.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Mine's like 4,000 or
Oh,
something like
well,
that.
so,
It's
you know,
so I've cleaned it out periodically because I'll go through and I'll like unsubscribe periodically to stuff that I'm on and I'll just subscribe, unsubscribe, or sometimes I'll just go in and I'll put in like like a phrase or like like a name of a company that I was on and I'll just like type in that and then I'll just mass
that's going to
delete
be
all
so
of it.
much time from with 404,000 emails.
Oh, I
How
know
can I
that is gonna be. Well,
legitimately,
if you just there's a way to just like mass open everything,
but
so
I
then
don't
it
know what I want to
just
keep and what I want to throw away some.
yes,
So like I don't move it in folders. I don't, or like if it's there, I just want to search my inbox and then that's it.
right.
Like I just want to leave it there. I just want it to stay there. So if I need it, but then I will go through like and start deleting. I'm like, what am I doing? This is such a waste of time. Like, so then I
It
stopped
is a lot
deleting
of
stuff and stopped unsubscribing. And, I was on a little kick at first. Like I was like, I'm going to get my email cleaned out for January. And then I was spending time and I'm like, I'd rather be doing something else. So,
right. It is a lot of work. It is. It's
yeah.
like mental. Or sometimes like, if I've done it like while watching a show or something where I kind of like distracted, where I'm kind of multitasking and stuff. But yeah, no, I get it. It can be a lot of work.
Yeah.
That's for
Anytime I
sure.
would screen share with someone, I'd be like, close your eyes. We're going to look at
Hold
my,
on,
like you're going to see the
hold
number
on
in
to your
my
butt,
inbox and you
because
could have a heart attack. But everything gets responded
hold
to
on to
that
your
needs to. Everything gets done. And my system works because I also am a person who can read something and I remember it. So, like, I
right.
know if
Well,
someone
and
sent me
sometimes,
an
like, if you
email
don't
and
respond to my email, I'll send you a
yeah,
message saying, "Hey, did you see the email I sent you earlier?" Or I'd call you and like, "Hey," and then you're like, "Okay, yeah, let me go get it," and then
yeah, I saw it come through, but let me go actually,
right,
whatever the case may be. So I'm like,
okay,
I'm
password.
constantly scanning and I have it's a
Well, yeah,
semi
and like
photographic
when
memory.
we were working together last, I mean, you were always on calls. So you couldn't really be expected to respond to an email immediately anyway because you're always on calls. So how could you?
I'd be like, if you
So
need me to respond something to approve, just hit me in chat and then I'll go in and do it.
right.
Like because it was just there was so much always flying in. It's hard to you can spend 10 hours a day just managing emails sometimes. So how do you balance that? My balance was scan. I know if you say something, I
I don't
saw your
know.
name flash through and I've seen it pop up. Again, semi photographic memory helps a lot with that. And then I can go back to so the number doesn't
Right.
bother me, which I know some people are probably listening, having heart palpitations just hearing me say 404,435 or whatever that number was. That's right.
It is a lot, but yeah, work for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think it's like when you think about time spent and how you spend your time and where your time's valuable, you start to like weed out those things. Because I'm telling you, like I used to be a real stickler about like I can't have any emails in my inbox. That means I didn't do what I was supposed to be doing. Now I'm like, I'm doing all these other
Well,
things. If I have an email, it's okay.
there's different like people that I've heard and like say like people are too focused on their email and they use it as a to-do list
Mm-hmm.
or treat it like a to-do list because if I don't have any emails, I must not have any work. So if I clear my inbox, then I'm done. And it's like, well, no, that's not actually how that works. It's just a communication system. And so you shouldn't be using it as a to-do list. Like that's a completely separate thing. And I've seen some executives say like, oh, when I first come in the morning, I'll work on something that I have to work on, and then I'll check emails for a couple hours and do that. And then I'll prioritize something else for a period of time. And I would try to do that. And, when I was at Clover, was trying to not look at email all the time because, I don't like when it flashes, and you're in a meeting and it flashes because then you're distracted.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to be like very present in meetings and stuff and like keep attention to what's going on. But at the end of the day, like when you get like 100 new emails and since you last checked, you're like, okay, I'm working late to catch up on all these stupid emails, which a lot of them are like maybe redundant or people replying, and I've
Reply
always been kind of
all.
a mindset of if you have to reply more than 2 or 3 times to an email, you all
It's
just
a
need to
phone
get on
call.
a
That's
call.
my rule.
Yeah,
More
and
than
so
three
people
times,
would
you pick up
message
that
me,
phone. You make that
like
call.
people would, and then people would message me or they try to call me and they realize I'm on a call. So then they'll message me like, hey, when you get a chance, and like sometimes I'm like, I don't even do that. Like that's actually somebody else's, or that's a different Danielle. That happened a lot. Or, like so when somebody on my team took care of it. So I would say, well, can you message that person? Or I'll let them know to do that, like give them access to a LinkedIn license or whatever. But if it was something I needed to really like do for them, I would be like, do you mind emailing it
Yeah.
to me? Because I don't want to forget in my messages. Like, like messages are just more like quick reminders, side chat, gossip. These are not like actionable items, I don't think.
Yeah, like I
But
forget sometimes, like if you're on, because you're doing so many things at a time. Like we have information overload. If you think about it, we typically have what, 2, 3 screens going. Like I resist it. I don't know if resisting is the right word, but I got to no. I think I work fast, right? But
Mhm.
until I worked at MedLink, I think is what we decided to call it, but I keep calling it Med Trackers.
Yeah,
But so either one, whatever we say, we're talking about the same company. So
whatever.
anyways, until there, they sent me another screen. I only worked off of one screen and still got everything
Hmm.
done. Now, because I was spoiled, I had to buy my own second screen. Do I really? I was fine. I was efficient. I was very efficient, but I do
Right.
love the back and
It's
forth
too
now of
much.
the screen. Like we're so
I've never really
overloaded
get
constantly.
into
It's
the
crazy.
screens. Yeah, I've never really been able to get into I mean, I'll do a split screen, like when you can do that, and that's fine because I have one really big screen. But I don't really like having two
Oh,
screens
I
because my
love it.
brain is
Like once I
all over
got
the place.
I can't live without it now. Like I need to have, like I use my laptop, like in this scenario for one thing, right? I have
Oh, okay,
another
yeah.
screen
There's
that
people
I'm
who
doing
use
other
the
things
laptop
on.
into more
Yeah.
monitors. Yeah.
But I did have two, like I always had two, well, three up at any given time. One was a mirror, and then the other one was, whatever second application I needed open. I didn't go between three, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah. So yeah, it's just and so yeah, like I said, I would try to be really present, especially since we were pretty much a camera on crew, and as a part of leadership, I wanted to be camera on because I wanted to instill that with the rest of my
Yeah.
team. I respect if people don't want to always be on camera, and would never be one of those people like everybody get on camera. But like I felt like that was like I needed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if people are texting me, people will text your phone, because sometimes I'd have vendors calling me or emailing me and then texting me on my cell phone. I'm like, "Dude,
Well, so
what
I
are
was
you doing?"
guilty of that sometimes. Like if like I need to
Well,
tell you
yeah, but
as we're
that's
on a vendor
different.
call, or like, and then I need to say something because we can't do the chat. Like, hey,
Right.
or like
Right.
even if it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
something
And
that is,
that's,
I'm
yeah.
guilty.
And that's different. Like, I would do that. But yeah. But like you have your email and then you have the meeting that you're on and then you have the Teams chat. And like I said, like I don't want any actionable things out of my Teams chat because that's not
Yeah.
how I view it. But a lot of people do. And then, so then like at the end of the day, I'd be like, oh my God, who was it who asked for something? And it would be some random person that I didn't normally deal with on a day-to-day basis who wasn't part of my immediate team. So I'd have to go scroll through everybody who messaged me that day and then go, okay, it was so and so, and then find the thing that they were looking for. Yeah, it's hard because you're trying to manage all these things and keep focused, and then and then while you're on all these meetings and you're in meeting overload,
Yeah.
you got to then go back to your emails and deal with all that stuff on top of anything else you have to work on. So
Yeah, it made me think
I
of,
don't know.
so thinking about these screens, I have another funny work story. I set myself up for this one, by the way. This was self-inflicted, but man, I had a good time about this one. I don't think you were there. So we were meeting in a hotel, and I was very new to this company, and I had like a newer leadership team and things like that. I had a couple of VPs, directors, things like that reporting to me. So I brought them all in so we could work on some things together, because I love to do that, like getting together in a room. That's my jam all day. I love just, let's solution this together. Let's figure out our direction, where we're going, what we need to do, right? And kind of go forward. So we're in the hotel lobby and we have this working session at night, which it was because it made sense, like after the meeting, whatever else. So anyways, we're at the hotel and we're doing this, we're doing a little session, and we just got done eating and just having a conversation about the next day, I think is what we were doing. And then a couple people were finishing up
Yeah,
for the next
pre-gaming.
that they had to
That,
present,
yeah.
because everybody was presenting. So some of them wanted me to look at their things and stuff like that. So I asked this question and I said, tell me what your first impression of me was. Like, what did you think of me? And then what do you think of me now? Like, what's different, you know? So anyways, everybody goes around and says their things. Like, I thought you were, like I was intimidated because you were very, when you talked, and then I got to know you, and, like, I have a lot of empathy and we have good conversations and things like that and whatever. So I'm like, oh yeah, that's, right. So that makes sense. So I get to this one person. I have to say her name, Jenny. No, I get to her. I wish I got to tell her about this podcast so she can watch it. She'll never live it down. She'll never live it down. So I said, so what did you think of me? And I love her so much, by the way, because she just shoots straight. She tells you like it is. Like, if it's on her mind, she is going to tell you. And I love it. I love every single second of it. I hope she never stops that. Never stops that. So anyways, so I get to her and she goes, I thought you might have been autistic. And I was like, I've never heard this before in my
Did
life.
not
Like,
see that coming.
I'm like,
Yeah.
what? Like, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I was just like, I've never
No, but I would never think anybody would think that
right.
about you. So it's kind of,
Like
yeah.
I have some things
Right.
going on. So I'm like, well, maybe, like I do have neurospicy. Like I'm trying, anyways. So not, like I said, not there's anything wrong. So I'm like, wait, what? And I was like, why would you? And she's like, and I thought you were super, super, super smart. And I still think you're super smart, but I thought you were really, really, really smart, like Rain Man smart. And I'm like, okay, right? So then she's like,
Right.
every time we got on a one-on-one, you wouldn't look at the camera. You were looking over here. And then she said, and then all of a sudden one day you started looking at the camera. So
Oh, because you were looking at your
I was
monitor.
looking
She
at my
thought,
monitor. So I was like, Jenny, I was looking at my monitor and I said, here's how I found out. Because no one told me. Like, here's how, like, and I'm still bad at looking in the places I need to be. I'm looking all over this screen. Like, that's who I am. So anyways, so like I actually had a friend, his name's Jermaine. Shout out to Jermaine for being real with me. So he was trying to become a supplier and wanted some advice on something, so I was like, well, let's just have a call and, I'll meet with you because he's in the same industry and things like that. So, I have my admin set up the call, Kristen sets it up, and I get on with Jermaine. And Jermaine says to me, okay, so back in school, I was called Jenny. Elementary school and junior high and some of high school when I lived in Chicago. So all the way in Illinois, Chicago, I was called Jenny. That was what I went by. So he looks at me and he goes, Jenny, why are you not looking at the screen? And why are you not looking at me? Why are you looking over there? And I was like, because my monitor's over here. Like, it made such logical sense to me.
right.
I was like, oh, my bad. So then I moved my laptop in front of me, and I always, have my laptop in front so I can kind of look at the screen. So if you're looking at your monitor,
Yeah, that would drive me crazy when people would do that. I mean, like you, I get it because you were always doing so much but you were good about like redirecting back too. But a lot of people do that and they're looking at their monitor and you can tell that they're not fully engaged. And that's one thing that always bugs me is like, I understand there's going to be times where something's going to pop up and you've got to kind of address it or whatever. But if you do that the whole time,
No, but
like
they
I'm
knew
just,
I was talking. Like she knew I was talking to her because like I'm talking to her like I'm talking to you now. You know what I mean? Like we're having this dialogue, but I'm just looking at the screen, which was like right here. So the whole time
so
I'm
yeah, I
talking to
can
her, I'm
imagine
looking
that
and I'm
she's
just,
like, oh, she's autistic. Yeah, she can't make eye contact. Yeah,
oops,
that's funny.
whoops. Like
That's funny.
it was so funny. Anyway, so yeah, that's
I
one of
was
my
thinking it was
favorite.
more about a personality thing because I'm like, your personality, I don't see that. But yeah, with that, I can
Yeah,
imagine.
yeah. I was just like, wait, how do you like? She's like Rain Man smart, like just. And she's like, and you are like, I see you drawing stuff on, like you're always, up there doing these things. But like, I really thought you just couldn't make eye contact with people. I was like, well, it was where my camera was.
What was the show that you watched? Like Wapner, Judge Wapner,
Yeah,
Wap 3 o'clock, Wapner at 3 o'clock, or something like that.
and I'm that. What's funny is like, even if someone takes like even I use a selfie phone, I never remember that the camera's up at top. I'm so bad at that. But then I feel like if I look at the camera, my eyes look way up. Yeah, like it does never looks normal to
Right.
me. But then I'm never looking at the
Yeah,
camera, so I've
yeah,
given up completely. It is what it
I
is.
know.
So
No, yeah, to me it looks like you're looking right at, but I don't know. I don't know where my camera was.
I feel like watching these, I'm doing pretty good. Like with if as long as I stay on this screen, I'm okay. So
Right.
because I like to look at things too. Like I'm a person who like even as I'm talking, like I like to look at the surroundings. I like to rescan it. Like I'm always scanning and looking at things. You know.
Yeah, well, and I get distracted. Like if something comes in front of me, like and I think sometimes it's like all the years of working from home. So like if I'm in an office, if I went into an office for a meeting or something and then people walking by, I'm like, who's that?
Yeah.
What are they doing? And I hear people talking like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, it's none of my damn business, but I'm just so not used to people talking around me,
Hmm.
who are not directly talking to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I get all nosy.
I used to get into like this trance almost like when I was working on stuff, or I still do it. Like it never goes away. You still have some of these habits.
Right.
So I'm working on something and I'm blocking out and I'm so focused on what I'm doing. I can
You're hyper focused.
hear like if like the boys would walk in or like let's say I'm in the middle of something and Richard walks in, whoever it is, I don't see them walk in and I can't hear them walk in because I'm just so hyper focused on what I'm doing. It's a little scary at times,
Right.
but
It's
like,
very hyper.
yeah, when the boys, they would have to be like
Yeah, I do the same too.
doing a little
My
shimmy in
my
front of my desk so
okay.
I knew they were there.
I heard somebody explain it this way, and I'm not sure if I'm going to explain it right or if this is real or somebody's just like interpretation of it. But it made sense to me that it was like when you have ADHD and you are hyper focusing on something, your brain sort of, and I used to say it was like my back brain because I didn't know how else to explain it. But it was like, if I had to work on something and I really needed to focus on it and I could not have any distractions, I'd have to put in headphones and listen to music really loud.
Mm.
And I was like, as a teenager too, like in order for me to do homework and stuff, I would have to listen to music really loud. My mom was always like, you can't be listening to work and, homework and listening to music and doing homework at the same time. I'm like, but actually I can. And that actually helps me. And it's something about how your brain works in that when you're trying to do something that requires like a lot of focus, but not a lot of like creativity necessarily, you kind of have to have something to kind of occupy your mind in a different way. So the music and stuff kind of helps to
See, I
distract
can't
you
do
in a weird way.
music. Like I have
Oh
to
yeah,
have
like
silence. Like the way that my brain
yeah,
works,
everybody's
and it
different.
like I
And
think that's why I shut everything out. Like I can't hear. I
right,
can't, you know what I mean? Like my peripheral is gone. Like that goes away.
right,
And it's just I'm like this laser focus. And I've seen Caleb do it too when he's watching film. So when he has, he's diagnosed with neurospicy ADHD. So like but
right,
he can really hyper focus on things, and I'm that
right.
same exact, but he can music.
It's
He
probably
can music in the background. I can't music in the background. I can't.
there's different types. Like there's distractive, like I think it's ADHD with distract and mine is a distracted.
Yeah.
Like I get very distracted by things. So in order for me to focus, then I have to kind of focus and really like that's what I'm saying, like with like emails and pop-up messages and stuff, it would take me out of whatever I was focusing on. But when I hyper focus like that, especially if I'm not listening to music or something and I'm trying to focus on that, it's exhausting.
Yeah. See, that's where
It's like so
I feel like I can bounce. Like if it's quiet too, and like I have like 5 things going, I can just boop, 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 boop. I can bounce. And it's
yeah.
so much easier.
Yeah,
Like,
I can too, but
yeah.
if I've got like music and stuff, it helps to keep me going in a weird way. Like it's just interesting because like until I was diagnosed and I wasn't diagnosed until like just a little over 5 years ago, then I didn't know this about myself. And so now that I know this about myself, I'm like, oh, it makes so many things make more sense
Mhm.
and how I deal with things. And yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, when I was growing up, like girls they didn't think girls could have
Oh, that's
ADHD.
so interesting. That's really,
Yeah, they didn't think. Yeah, so when I was then it was called ADD. It was attention deficit disorder, and they thought that only boys could get it and that they would grow out of it. Well, now we know that people don't really grow out of it. You usually just create mechanisms and habits that help you to deal with
yeah,
it.
I never knew something
But
was wrong with me. Like I always felt, which I don't think there is. Like,
well,
let me just
nothing's
say
wrong
that.
with you.
Like,
It's just a
no, I
different
just think
way of
differently. Like my brain fires
right.
differently. Like it works in different ways. Like, and it's been kind of cool. I didn't know, like, because like I said, Caleb and I have kind of a little bit different, things going on.
Right.
But like some of the things I've been able to explain to him, like how you can on multiple different things. And like, that's really like, it's a superpower. Not a lot of people can do that. So,
Right.
when your brain is set up like that,
Well, I
I
think
think it's
for
pretty cool.
me, it helps me to see things in a different. I know that I see things in a different way than a lot of people, and I can if I, and it's helped me a lot because I think it helps me to trust my gut more. Like I would know instinctually something was wrong because there's something about having ADHD which allows you to see patterns in a different way. Not patterns like literally geometric or something, but patterns in behavior and the way people interact with you that you're able to kind of things will kind of jump out to you faster
Yeah.
than another person where you're like, whoa, that's a weird thing they said. And so it's made me able to tell more easily if people are lying and to understand if like I remember a couple of years ago when we were at Clover, I was on a team and we were doing like a little holiday get together, via Teams. And so I suggested that we play a game called Two Truths and One Lie. And you have to tell 3 things, and one of them is a lie. And so none of us really knew each other that well. So it was kind of like a good opportunity to see like what people would figure out. And I was able to figure out the lie in everybody. And it wasn't because sometimes it's a little bit like body, like something
Yeah.
about your body will change,
I'm
whatever.
so bad
But
at
also it was like
lying.
kind of
Horrible at
quickly
lying.
I could kind of quickly, and I think the guy who I was reporting to at the time, I think I kind of freaked him out a little bit because I was able to, because I started asking him questions, like, because you could ask a question before, like people would ask questions, and he told this story about when he was like 11 years old or whatever, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but I was like, I don't think that's true. And so I started asking him like some really specific questions that in order to back up the lie, he had to keep lying. And I was like, yeah, that's the lie right
Yeah.
there. And it kind of freaked him out. And he's like, how did you figure that out? And I'm like, I just like, I was a little bit older than
Mhm.
him. And so like what he was referring to that was going on in the world wasn't right. Was like in my brain, I'm like, that's not right. And so I'm like, I have a tendency now to be able to figure out patterns and things like that, which is in and of itself
Yeah.
a
You
super.
don't got to figure out, I'm just a bad liar. So I'm horrible
Well, I
at
am too,
lying.
for
Like
sure.
I am like,
And
I
I
would
think
always
that's part
tell
of,
on
yeah,
myself when I was a kid, I just stayed quiet because I was snitching on myself.
right. Yeah.
I don't have it in me. I don't have it in me. I don't.
Well, I remember years ago, like Kevin would be working, like when Kevin and I first got together, he had some old cars he was working on. And so he would meet up with, guys that he met, online or whatever who had the same kind of cars, and they'd like swap parts or buy parts from each other and, things like that. And it was kind of like its own little microcosm of this community. And so there was a couple times where I'm like, you shouldn't trust him. I don't think you should trust him. And he's like, why? You barely even met him. And I'm like, yeah, there's something. There's something there. I don't know what it is, but I don't think you should trust him. I don't know why. And I was like, at that time, I had not been that many years since I'd been out of a very negative relationship.
Yeah.
And so I felt like it was that, like I'm honing in on the, trust a woman who's been in some bad relationships to tell you about a man, right? Like tell you about somebody who's treated them badly. So that's what I thought it was, but in hindsight, I don't know that was it, but it was just, like he got to the point where he'd be like, okay, I need you to meet this guy and let me know what you think, because I'm thinking of buying a car for him. And I'm like, oh, I don't know,
Yeah. And kind of that, right? That intuitiveness kicking in and us trusting our gut and, listening to, I had, so one of I call him my soul son, it's my son, love him. But he asked me, he said, Mom, how do you discern between anxiety and intuition? I said, well, that's a kind of a tricky one. So Rashard and I talked about a little bit about it, and I think we each have our own ways, right? But I think, how I explained it to him, I said, if you hear that jumbly talk in your mind and it doesn't really make sense and it feels a little crazy, that's anxiety. And like if you
but it's
are
also
clear in trying to
intuition.
talk yourself out of something.
How does it make you feel?
Right. If
it
you
makes
feel it here, like you feel
bad
that here, I feel it here, right? Like is where I feel like
then it's probably intuition and you need to back off.
And your intuition is heart and gut.
If it's anxiety, like you met somebody and you're going to go on a date or whatever and you have anxiety about that, that's probably good. But if you just got done with the date and you're like, that was kind of weird, and that's your intuition,
Yeah.
So
yeah, I was thinking like it comes from gut, right? Intuition is gut. And then your anxiety is more like you like here,
your
like
heart,
in your chest, and then and up, you feel your anxiety. So like listen to that cue. And then like learned something a while back, and it was something with your response, like how you respond. And it's part of human design. So I love human design. It's one of my favorite things. It's so cool. So anyways, so when you do that, like it tells you how you respond with your intuition. But one of the things in the way that I respond is if I immediately feel my head shake, it's a no. Like if is the response,
that's going to be a no.
So like you're like if you're in that state and you're in that, intuitive state, like your body will tell you, or in your voice will tell you too as you start to speak it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And I think it's hard to accept some of that, because I think a lot of times, especially as women, we're kind of taught historically to just be nice and, just go along to get along kind of thing. And so it takes a lot to kind of get to a point where you're like, that doesn't feel right to me, or that's not cool. And to trust that, so, or society will be like, oh, it's fine. Like, that's normal. No, maybe it's not, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Trust your gut. It's always, I had a conversation before we wrap up. I know we're going to wrap up soon, but I had this conversation with one of the people that I was talking to about potentially joining their company. It was exactly that. It was about trusting your gut, right? And she said to me, she goes, I always trust my gut, my first instinct on what, happens next or whatever else. So like, that's a tough place to get to, right? Sometimes it's a tough place to get to when you think about, are you giving people a fair shot, fair chance at the same time? Or are you, is there some bias coming into play? So I think you have to be really careful too with, also that intuitiveness versus, is there some sort of, bias that's might be mapping it. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially when it comes to hiring decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm like, because my gut's been right or it's been wrong. Like what I thought was my gut sometimes, right or wrong. You know what I mean? Like, so if you do make a wrong decision, all you can do is just deal with it, right? You make the right decision. You're like, but sometimes you're going to miscall it. Even intuition and, doing the right. It's not 100% all the time, not 100% all the time. So depending on how you're filtering it, if you have no filter on it, then you're good to go. But most of us have things that block us. from previous experiences.
Right. Right. Yeah. And the older you get, the more filters you can get, you know.
Yeah.
But also, I think, age can help too, because it helps you to filter through more life
Yes.
experiences and what is, whereas when you're young and you're kind of new to everything, like you don't know, necessarily what is right, or you have some preconceived notion of what things should be. And it's like once you get older, you kind of understand more how things work and what your boundaries are, what you can tolerate, what you can't tolerate. And then, no, this doesn't make sense for me, or no, I think this could be better, or, whatever it is. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. Like clearing that out, right? And working through it based on experiences. What do I always talk about like the grains of good with, my kids. Like take the grain of good and sweep everything else away. Like if you can get to that place with people, with things, like you might not engage with someone anymore, or like if they've really hurt you or they've done things. But if you think about, if you can take the grain of good, what was your lesson from that? And what did you receive? Whether it's not to deal, whatever it might be, right? And then you take the rest away. Like I look at all my past experiences like that. Like there's always some grains of good in there that I can kind of take and separate out. So I'm always appreciative.
Sure. Yeah. Because I think there's always something of value that maybe it's not always good in initial review, but like there's always something of value that can come out of anything, So there's something to be learned out of everything too.
I agree. It's always a lesson. It's a lesson or a blessing. It's a lesson or a blessing.
Always a teachable moment.
That's right. That's right. All right. Do you want to wrap here and say, like, follow, share, comment, follow us on all your favorite listening channels like YouTube, Spotify, iHeart. Danielle, I'm going to ask you again what I'm missing.
Apple Podcast, Pocket Cast. Yeah. Basically any Amazon Music, we're there. Yeah.
All right.
We're all, any listen, you can.
Until next time. Bye.
Bye.